Hello and welcome to the Plumes of Oz, where today we're going to look at the pied birds of Australia. The first thing to consider is the meaning of the word pied. Classic English dictionaries refer to it as being two or more colours, but qualifies it as usually black and white. More contemporary dictionaries say that pied can be just two or more colours, not necessarily black and white. Webster adds the colours are blotched. This last qualification adds a little bit of confusion, for blotching is different than stripes. For instance, a zebra we would regard as being a pied animal. But remember, a zebra has stripes. So amidst all this dictionary confusion of what pied means, we must go back into the English language to sort out, historically, how the word pied was used. And the first one we will turn to is William Shakespeare, the bard. In Ode to Spring, he calls daisies pied, and then he alludes to the colours of springtime as April pied. Now, daisies have white petals with a yellow centre, and springtime is magic for the multicolours that come out in the flowers. So Shakespeare did not use pied in terms of black and white at all. The next master of the English language that I would call on is Robert Browning, a contemporary of William Wordsworth. And Browning, using the story The Pied Piper of Hamelin, turns this story into a poem. You all know the story, how there was an infestation of rats. The town couldn't get rid of it, in came the piper. The piper played a tune and the rats followed him out of town. Browning's resource pictures of the Pied Piper would have been those etchings that were in black and white, or maybe prints, again black and white. He portrays the piper as being dressed in yellow and red, not black and white. Yet the poem is called The Pied Piper of Hamelin, so Browning himself did not use pied to mean black and white. In 1957, Hal Stanley made a movie, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, based on Browning's poem, and in it again the Pied Piper is portrayed not as black and white but yellow and red. So from a dictionary point of view, a bird with multiple colours that are in blotches is classified as being pied. There is very little mention of black and white, so we need to go back further to find out exactly why the ornithologists labelled birds pied only when they had black and white. The answer is back in the 13th century, where the French term for the common European magpie was pie. At about the same time, the English added a prefix, mag, making the word magpie for exactly the same bird. Mag and Maggie are short nicknames for Margaret, and Margaret was a common nickname in the household kitchen. And so the chattering of the women in the kitchen was likened to this bird, the magpie. So from the French, it is the classical pied bird, and from the English, it is a chatterer. Now, what I've said applies to the European or the Eurasian magpie, which is also very similar to the North American magpie. Yet the video I have shown is the Australian magpie, and it has more of a song than a chatter. The Northern Hemisphere magpies are corvids. The Australian magpie is more distantly related. Now, with animals like a zebra, we never know whether it's black on white or white on black. But the obvious answer is keratin is white, and these ibis have virtually white all over. The black colour is caused by melanin binding to the keratin. The outer epithelial layer of vertebrates is called skin. And within the skin there are variations of glands and follicles. Embryologically, these are derived from what we call the ectoderm, or the outer embryological covering. And in the development of the skin, the ectodermal cells are producing various factors that subsequently control the appendages on the skin. The most important of these is ectodysplasm A, and ectodysplasm A regulates the formation of follicles within the skin of vertebrates that either produce hair, scale or feathers. In other words, the follicles that produce keratin in some form or another. So the commonality in design of all vertebrates is the ectodermal outer layer of keratin, and the molecular similarity suggests a masterful design, something that cannot be explained by natural selection and Darwinian evolution. Keratin is a protein, and this combines with melanin to give the shades between black and white of the melanin and the keratin. I say variations, for there are different forms of melanin. The biochemistry of melanin synthesis is basically the polymerization of an amino acid called tyrosine. Then, in the synthetic pathways, the body can add an indole group, and once this happens, the melanin, which is black, becomes a brownish or a yellowish colour, and this is called pheomelanin. And so in Homo sapiens, we have redheads. Other pigments can also bind to the keratin, in particular the carotenoids. Carotenoids give rise to vitamin A, but they are also quite colourful, with the reds and yellows. That's why a carrot is named, because it contains carotenoids giving the orange colour. A true pied bird will have minimal allomelanin and carotenoid. There are several remarkable changes with melanin production in birds. For instance, a black swan, as a cygnet, is white, but then, as the hatchling gets older, so it changes to the black. Other birds, when they're immature, have more pheomelanin, and then gradually the darker melanin production takes over and the bird will go into the black phase. Many birds, when in breeding mode, will have increasing colour or increasing contrast. There are 3 honeyeaters, the pied, the banded and the black, that all increase the melanin component, giving a higher contrast when they are in breeding mode. Here, for instance, the banded honeyeater, and then the male in full breeding mode. It is black and white, a true pied bird. In the mid-1700s, the Linnaean system was introduced for naming birds. So ornithologists were proficient in both Latin and Greek. Allocating common names was similar. There must be a historical precedence for the name to be carried on. In Australia, we have 8 birds where the common name includes pied. Pied honeyeater, pied heron, pied oystercatcher, pied monarch, pied butcherbird, little pied cormorant, pied imperial pigeon, and the pied currawong. So all these birds with the common name pied should have a blotched black and white appearance in their feathers, similar to a magpie. And here I must emphasise we are talking about a mature bird, for even the immature magpie is not blotched with black and white, but has shades of grey. When the International Ornithological Committee looks at the names of birds, they look at the overall appearance and skip over some of the minutiae. Let's have a look, for example. The pied honeyeater. When this bird leans forward and we look at the tail, there is still some rufous. A minutiae. Overall, the bird's appearance is classical pied. The pied heron. Here with 2 youngsters. It is not really a blackbird, but more of a charcoal. When they go into breeding mode like this one, they go a little bit more intense with the contrast, but still a deep charcoal more than black, but overall a pied appearance. Pied oystercatchers. One has a little bit of rufous colour. This is most likely an immature bird. The bird on the left is smaller, most likely a female, but a true pied bird. Now let's consider birds that have a black and white appearance, yet are not called pied. Firstly, the butcherbirds. Well, this first example is the pied butcherbird, which we've already mentioned is called pied. But there are other butcherbirds, like this one, the black-backed butcherbird, which are also classically pied. Then there are other butcherbirds, like the black butcherbird, which doesn't have any white at all. Then there is the grey butcherbird. Front on, it may appear pied, but from the wing and the back, there is a lot of grey. A flock of choughs drinking at a dam. There's a little bit of rain. They are called white-winged choughs, but when you look at them, where is the white? Here now we have 2 choughs. One has a little bit of white, a striation, and the other one is completely black. The reason why the white feather is showing is that this bird has lost a primary feather in molt. But when the wing is extended, we can see underneath there is considerable white, a white feather with a black tip. And with a bill like a babbler, they are designed to scratch under the surface soil, finding prey. White-winged choughs are rather raucous in their calls, and it's only when they often go into flight that we may see that they do have a pied appearance. The next bird that we want to talk about is the chowchilla. This is often heard, but not often seen, for it lives in the rainforest. It's a dark bird, hard to find. The male is dark on the uppers with a touch of green, but there is a very white chest. Now the female, most of the white chest has been replaced by tan colour. The male with no tan is very close to being pied, but that little bit of green and brown in the back really makes it doubtful that we can call this bird pied. The restless and paperbark flycatcher are very close to being pied. There is a touch of brown in the primaries in combination with blue iridescence. So when the restless flycatcher is perched, it certainly looks like a pied bird, but as soon as it opens its wings, we can say immediately it is not pied. The mudlark, or pewee, is a definite pied bird. After all, its other common name is the magpie lark, a type of flycatcher. Both male and female are pied, but look under the chin, look for the white, and there you'll find the female. The male hooded robin can also be placed in the descriptive term of being a pied bird with its beautiful black and white. Remember, the female hooded robin is not black and white but grey. It is not pied. These birds are dimorphic. As the hooded robin is not called a pied robin, we can only use pied as a descriptive term for the male. The woolly wagtail, and wagtails have the habit of wagging their tail. The male and the female are both black and white, with a touch of brown on the primary wing feathers, but overall generally regarded as a pied bird. The most commonly recognised call of birds in the Australian bush is that of the woolly wagtail. High on a perch, a black and white bird trilling away. This is the white-winged triller. It certainly looks pied, and for all purposes it could be called a pied bird. And that is because it's in breeding mode. When it's not in breeding mode, the fawns and browns are far more prominent, so we cannot call this bird pied. Raptors. Many raptors have a small amount of black and white, but the prominent ones that we would possibly regard as coming into the pied category would be birds like this, the black-shouldered kite. But look at all the grey on the back. Though it is black on the shoulder and white on the belly and head, it is really not fitting the criteria of a pied bird. The same with the grey falcon. Though it has black barring on the tail and patches of white, the overall appearance of this bird is that it is grey. Here a pair feeding on a peaceful dove in a tree. Male and female are isomorphic, both very grey, hence its name. The final raptor is the grey goshawk, and this has no black on it at all, a little bit of white, but otherwise the bird is grey. So it's a fusion of black and white, but is certainly not pied. The white-necked heron, a highly contrasting bird, but not quite black and white. the dark colour is more of a dark charcoal grey, with a little bit of red in breeding mode, but otherwise it would pass as a charcoal. We previously looked at the pied heron and found that that was also a charcoal colour. And as it was given the name pied, we would also include the white-necked heron as being a charcoaly bird will be accepted as pied on the basis that the pied heron is also charcoal. Iridescence describes the changing colour, and this is seen in this beautiful ibis, the straw-necked ibis. The black feathers seem to have rainbow colours over them. This is caused not so much by colour or dye in the feather, but the way the weave of the feather reacts with light, a little bit like oil over the surface of water. And when flying in a flock, the straw-necked ibis does appear as a pied bird. The black is iridescent. The white ibis also is a pied bird. Ibis are waders and colony breeders. The delicacy that they like most is the eel. The black-necked stork, or as we know it in Australia, the jabberoo, is also very much a pied bird. But as the adult matures, the neck goes green. Remember the iridescence of the glossy ibis? And so it is with the black-necked stork. Though described as having a black neck, when it goes green, it's not that it's got dye or pigment in the black feathers. The feather is still black, but the way the light refracts with iridescence from the surface of the feather, varying according to the weave. So the black feathers appear as green with a touch of purple on the cap. The white-headed stilt, definitely black and white feathers only. A dusky moorhen. The white is just under the tip of the tail. It's more of a striation than a blotch. And the closer we go, we can see that it's minimal white, but the bird has more of a grey appearance. So, for me, this bird is not pied. The Australian pelican is defined as a pied bird, but there is grey going up the neck of the immature birds, and sometimes in an adult breeding mode, there is yellow on the chest. Overall, I think we would all agree that the pelican is a pied bird. The Rajah shelduck, from a distance, will always appear to be pied, particularly in flight, but when we get up close to them, we find that once again it's that deep chocolate colour. The black swan, generally regarded as a black bird, yet the tips of the feathers of the wing are white. A little bit like the chough, you don't see the white until the bird moves its wing, and it is especially visible in flight. The magpie goose. As we know, the magpie is the prototype for the word pied, so the magpie goose we know will be a pied bird. In a descriptive sense, the term pied can be used to describe the front of a bird. This happens with honeyeaters. The classic one is the black honeyeater. It has a definite pied frontal appearance, the wing being a little brown to yellow. But when this bird goes into breeding mode, it does adopt a pied pattern. It is dimorphic, the female being more grey in appearance. Likewise, the banded honeyeater, with its pied frontal chest, but in breeding mode, it is pied. The white-fronted honeyeater has a white-fronted chest, but when it turns you can see the brown and yellow. Now the blue-faced honeyeater, you may say it's got blue, so it shouldn't count even towards pied, but the blue is not involving the feathers. But even so, the yellow wing and the yellow back exclude this from being called pied, but it can be included within the pied-fronted birds. Now there are two honeyeaters that have a lot of black and white over the front and could be described as being frontally pied, but are not pied birds, mainly because they have the intense yellow on the wings, the New Holland honeyeater, and now the white-cheeked honeyeater. With the pigeons, we've already seen the pied imperial pigeon, but now we have the white-headed pigeon, black and white, but again it has significant iridescence, and and when it bends over to have a drink, you can see that green sheen from the back. When looking over the ocean from the shore, it appears that many of the birds have a pied appearance. Often it's just due to contrasting colours. So let's first of all go and look at the pelagic birds. Pelagic means open sea. And the first bird that we always think of is the albatross. Now the albatross breed on islands just above the Antarctic Circle. And we have several species of albatross. Firstly, here is the yellow-nosed, and overall they have contrasting colour, but a lot of them have rufous, like the wandering albatross when it is young. As the albatross gets older, they go more to black and white. Many of the wandering albatross complex, or snowy albatross in particular, will often have a little bit of apricot colour on the neck. So it is only the very mature wandering albatross without the apricot patch on the neck that we can call a pied bird. The shy albatross has significant amounts of grey, far removed from anything like the resemblance to a black and white pied magpie. See the black brow on this bird? It is called a black-browed albatross. Now notice the dark brown colour under the wing. This is an immature bird. Now the adult, with a white underwing with a black rim. Very close to being a pied bird, but there is still a little bit of rufous on the upper wing. Another bird with a dark brow. This one is a Campbell albatross, named after breeding on Campbell Island south of New Zealand. It is very close to fitting the definition of pied, and the dark underwing is far more extensive than in the black brow. This for me is the most likely albatross that can be classified as being pied. To find pelagic birds, we must head out into the open ocean or the pelagic. I prefer to go off the coast, not going down into the Southern Ocean where there are the roaring 40s and the furious 50s, which the albatross love, for they fly in a dynamic way, inverting the ocean's sine wave power to give them lift and velocity. This is not only the albatross, but all other seabirds. Shearwaters are usually the first pelagic bird that we find on pelagic trips. These are dark in colour, without white, so always when we find an albatross coming, that little white dot, it makes the pelagic trip all worthwhile. And there it is, attracted by the smell of cod liver oil through its tubular nostrils. And the poem, the rhyme of the ancient mariner, rings through my head as if it were yesterday at high school. In 1984, Steve Harris of Iron Maiden put the rhyme of the ancient mariner to song, and it became an epic for Iron Maiden, a 13-minute compilation that has fantastic guitar riffs and memorialises some of the classic statements out of Coleridge's poem. The mariner, the main person in the poem of Coleridge, tells how he was on a ship that became ice-bound. The ice cracked and growled about them, and then an albatross appeared. As if by a miracle, their luck changed. The ice broke. The gentle breezes blew, and the ship was again on its journey. But then, for no reason at all, the mariner shot the albatross with a crossbow. The crew were mortified. The wind stopped blowing. The ship became stranded. Rations became low. And you'll remember that statement, water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, as the ship's supply ran low. The crew all die, and only the mariner is alive. But he knows now that he must do penance for what he has done. Instead of the cross of Christ around his neck, he now feels the weight of an albatross, and so we have that saying, an albatross hung about the neck. The three birds here are very white, but the wings have that dark chocolate colour, not black. There is no apricot colour on the neck. An albatross can live for up to 40 to 60 years, so the rufous colour can take a long time to go before the bird becomes dark. Rufous colouring is common among the pelagic birds. We've already seen the shearwaters, and here we have these petrels that are also this very deep rufous. This one has a minimal amount of white, but certainly they are not pied birds. In March of this year, 2024, birds were dying in the Antarctic region. This is because of influenza A, avian influenza H5N1, a new variant of bird flu. This virus has already taken nearly half the population of the Peruvian pelicans, carried by migratory birds or birds moving around over water ponds, and has gone from northern Asia through Europe, North America, South America, and now into Antarctica. At this point, we haven't had it in Australia, but it is probably only a matter of time. At this point, skuas are the main pelagic bird to be affected by this virus. Penguins are also suffering, and the concern is now that the penguins, as they come into colonies, will be at greater risk of viral exposure and subsequent death. Albatross numbers are diminishing. Most of this has been attributed to long line fishing. And now the new added threats to these birds are global warming and avian influenza. Here the black-browed albatross coming in for a feed. It's a little bit darker than what we saw with the wanderer or the snowy albatross. Though it has increased in contrast, it is not a pied bird. There are still rufous markings on the wing. The gliding motion of an albatross is often called dynamic soaring. It's a bit like being on a BMX pump track, where motion is achieved not by pedalling, but by shifting weight. Instead of using shift of weight to increase the velocity, the energy is derived from the sine wave motion of the waves, causing a lift in the air. The albatross uses this to get lift. Notice the rufous coloration of the upper wing. The yellow nose has even a softer brown on the upper wing. The last albatross to consider, that I believe is probably the most pied of all, is Campbell albatross, breeding on Campbell Island, south of New Zealand. Not having any video of penguins, my only other contribution to pied birds on pelagic trips is the Pomeranian jager, a true pied bird. The Cape petrel also comes very close to being pied, whereas Wilson's petrel has a lot more rufous in it, even though it is often described as being pied. After looking for pied birds in the southern waters of the Australian coastline, I now want to take you into the northern waters, looking for seabirds there that have a pied appearance. Leaving the Queensland coast, we can find small islands, or even smaller than that, cays, coral sands covering the reef. And look at the massive birds, and when you look from a distance, there is a lot of black and white. Now, seabirds are a little bit different than pelagic birds. Seabirds need to come and rest far more frequently, so they are always close to islands or shorelines. Whereas the greater majority of pelagic birds are born on an island, then take to sea, not coming back to the island until it is time to breed. And breeding maturity for an albatross may not occur until the bird is either 6 or 7, a long time to be constantly in flight. This sand clay is called Michaelmas Cay and is just off the coast of Queensland from Cairns. It is famous for the number of birds that come here to breed. Here the greater majority of filming will be done in slow motion, so we can get identification of the birds. As you can hear from the chatter, there is chaos, and if we filmed it in normal speed, it would also be chaos. It is slowed down to about a quarter of the normal speed of the bird. Periodically, you will see a tern or a gull fly by. Now these all have grey backs, and generally I won't be talking too much about terns or gulls, for they are not pied birds. But the dominant pied bird here is that one with the black on the upper wing and white on the lower wing. And this is a tern, but it is not a greyback tern. It is called the sooty tern. And here on the colony, you'll see the partner bird coming in, bringing in feed for the bird sitting at the nest. The classic grey upper terns are standing at the background. These are the crested terns. The young sooty terns go to a creche while mum and dad go out fishing. But even these young birds are pied in appearance. Sooty terns like this, just hovering over the flock, is a spectacular sight to see on a day like this when the skies are blue. And they are a true classic pied bird. Another bird that we can see on Michaelmas Cay with black and white is the frigatebird. Here, a lesser frigatebird, sitting at a high point. Michaelmas Cay once had trees, but after Cyclone Yasi, there are no trees now standing, but the pirate birds wanted to sit at a high point, watching for other seabirds, hoping to startle them, to drop the prey. Frigatebirds are also effortless in flight. Standing out with their long tails, they can glide without flapping their wings compared to the other seabirds like the terns. Frigatebirds, when they are young, have a rusty coloured head, so it's only the mature frigatebird that is black and white. And always remember that the male loses its white, being replaced by a large red gular pouch. Now the boobies. This one looks as though it's pied, but it is a brown boobie. The high contrast between the black and the white makes it appear pied, but when it lands and we get a close look, we can see that it's a dark chocolate, not black. There is a degree of sexual dimorphism with the brown boobie. It has blue around the eye for the male. The boobies go a little bit more in their nesting than most of the other seabirds. Apart from a scrape, they will put sticks around about the nest. And if possible, they will also collect bluish items to gather together around the nest. There is one true pied boobie, and that is Abbott's boobie, that I have not seen. Here, a pair of brown boobies nest building. As you can see, there's a lot of complex behaviour involved. The male has the blue around the eye. But alas, we can't call the brown boobie a pied bird, though it has a pied appearance in flight. When we get up close, it does not have black. It is a similar story with the common noddy. The Australian common noddy has mostly a very dark colour, and then a little bit of white cap going to grey. But we can't even put it in the pied appearance category. The reason for this is that this tropical bird, the common noddy, is a subspecies, and there are other common noddies found throughout the tropical belts of the world. And in the Antipodes, or Central America area, the common noddy is a very pale brown, called the brown noddy. It is the same bird, but a different subspecies. So despite the very heavy browns that we have in Australia giving this contrasting appearance, by description or common name, it cannot be even referred to as being pied. The Australian gannet. But alas, no, it is not pied. The young birds are pied, but as the bird matures, it gets a yellowness about the head. On behalf of the Plumes of Oz, thank you for watching this video. We appreciate your support. We will leave you with the gannets fishing. If you agree or disagree with many of the comments we have said about birds being pied, Please leave your comments below. Thank you for watching.